We hear, do not be afraid, for see, I am bringing you good news. Do not be afraid, not because God is bringing Mary or Joseph good news, which is true, although I'm sure there are times when they weren't sure. Not because they were bringing any particular people in the story good news, but God is bringing us all good news, but particularly to you and you. That this good news on this night really is meant for each and every one of us. That the idea of this night that we have all hustled and bustled and done whatever it is you do to get here, to this point in your day, hopefully at some point it's about love. Hopefully at some point it's about knowing that God loves you more than you can ask or imagine. A friend of mine this week, they had all these wonderful plans for Christmas. They were just all excited, and they had family coming, and everybody was coming, and they had their house decorated, and everything. One of the people called me and said, the house looks like a museum, and no one can come. Happened to be my daughter. And I said, really? Yes. You know? Because COVID had hit their house, and of course, nobody, so we know that this is still among us. The good news, of course, is that it's all okay. But the good news is that at the end of the day, it's about love. At the end of the day, I was able to say, you know, it is going to be fine. Of course, that was easy for me to say. But at that time, it was received. Because wherever we are together, when two or more are gathered together, wherever we are together, God is here. We hear the story of Mary and Joseph. Luke does a wonderful job of kind of filling out all the details. Earlier this month, we heard the story of Mary saying, okay, yes. We hear Elizabeth saying yes. Last week we heard about John the Baptist making way. But tonight they've traveled all these miles. Tonight they've traveled all these miles, and there was no room at the inn. There was no place for them. There was no place for them to stay, so they found this stable. And born in a manger. We sang the song that I bet many of us have heard since we were littles. But remember that manger is a feeding trough. Like, it was probably pretty smelly in there. Like, this wasn't the Christmas they designed. This wasn't they maybe didn't have power either. Maybe we all know friends and family tonight that don't have power. Maybe they had all these Christmas plans and they didn't have any power. Mary and Joseph certainly didn't have power. It was stinky and messy, but holy. And those are our lives, stinky and messy sometimes, right? But holy. And it's in those holy moments that God shows up, and we're called to see them. I read this really neat story this week, and I, of course, would never have been this father, but I thought it was wonderful because, this family was living in this church, and they had a pageant, which is a very cool thing. Maybe that'll happen for us someday. And they were having this pageant, and the kids were all acting out all the characters, but they had decided to have real animals. Which, of course, Kathy has done theater her whole life. I've done theater far too much to know you don't use real animals. But they thought this was a good idea, and this was fun, but of course his daughter was terrified of the real animals. And she was supposed to be Mary, not planned. And the father was just trying to convince her that the animals weren't going to move, and they weren't going to poop, and it was going to be fine, that he was going to take care of everything. Nope. And I had a daughter like that, she was like that too. Nope. So the father said, okay, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay down and they're going to cover me with straw. They'll cover me all up with straw. So they won't even be able to see me, but you know I'm there between you and the enemy. Now that's a good dad. I mean, I don't know if this was a made-up story or not, but I'm gonna hope he's real out there, and I think that's a cool. It's all about love, but what did he do? He laid down, and she did the thing. Our lives sometimes don't go the way we plan. Maybe the stagehands don't work, maybe they move, maybe they poop. Inevitably, when you use live animals in productions, they always have to. God shows God's self in the most amazing places. Sometimes it's the dad laying down like the shepherds used to make sure that the sheep couldn't get out of the pen. So in this night, we imagine we are now in this next year of 2022, bordering on 2023. Who knows what it's going to bring, right? None of us know. But what we do know, what I do believe in my bones, is that God will continue to show up, because God has showed up in the past. God showed up in that dad that said, okay, we are going to do this. Dad showed up in each and every one of your lives today in ways that I don't know. But the way God shows up is in love, in little places. And if we are too afraid to love, then we miss it. We all have days when we are, days when it's hard. But remember that tonight the angel is saying, I'm bringing you good tidings. And you good tidings, like this is good news for you. As many people that know this, I love Amanda Gorman, and I love her poem, The Hill We Climb. And last week, on fourth Sunday of Advent, I said, let us imagine stepping out of the darkness into the light, and let us not be afraid. Let us remember that God is saying, this is good news for you, and that part of our work is receiving that. In her words, she says, when day comes, we step out of the shade, aflame and unafraid. The new dawn blooms as we free it, for there is always light, if only we're brave enough to see it. If only we're brave enough to be it. So on this night, and we imagine with all the hustle and bustle that will happen as we leave, or maybe not. Maybe this is a night that feels particularly hard for you. God will show up in the messiness and in the joyfulness and in the brokenness of our lives. If only we are brave enough. Remember, sometimes people think courage is only like bravery that said its prayers in the morning, right? So as you think about it, imagine God being in the midst of it. What would have to be happening in your life for you to be that dad to think, okay, I'm going to lay down and cover myself with straw because we're going to make this happen. I am bringing you good news, glad tidings of great joy. Let it be so.